Hello and welcome everyone to episode 84 of One Piece at a Time, the One Piece read-through podcast where we read and discuss 5 chapters of the One Piece manga each and every week. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host and freelance letterer at Shonen Jump, Brandon Bovia. How you doing, Brandon?
What's up, everybody? I'm, of course, Brandon Bovia here every week. Letterer of Dragon Ball Super Kaiju number 8, Wild Strawberry, blah, blah, blah. We talked about the first episode of the live action show last week, so we're just, coming back to finish it off.
Yeah, we're still taking a break from the manga for now because we got the rest of the first season to talk about. And there's a lot to discuss because after the first episode, I think we both came away pretty positive. Like there was definitely, we noticed the changes, but we understood a lot of the changes and we're pretty positive on it. And at that point, you had watched, the first 2-3 episodes?
Yeah, first 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're getting set. But now we've watched all 8 episodes of the first season, covering the first basically 95 chapters of this show.
Which is pretty absurd when you put it that way.
Yeah, the manga. So it's pretty impressive. Yeah. And definitely, if you've read it before, you can absolutely see where they cut things here and there. But I think in an overall sense, I have to commend this series because for the most part, it nailed it. I mean, it really captured the spirit of the show.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I wanted to... When I finished the show, I wanted to be like, as a fan of the manga and the anime, it's really easy to get caught up in they cut this, and this, and that has this consequence and this consequence. It's really easy to get caught up in just what's missing. Mm-hmm. But I would rather frame things as what did they do with the things that are still there, right?
Yes, I think that's kind of a better way to put it.
Yeah, because and that's sort of the case for any adaptation. You could just go on and on and on about the list of things that especially with us, we've been podcasting about the manga, so we're pretty intimately familiar with this material, so you can go this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. But I looking at the things that they kept and how they kept it, and I don't know. I described this to my friends as this is the bare essentials version of One Piece.
That's a good way to put it. It's there to get people interested, and still, it's the thing is, it's cohesive. It's still cohesive. It doesn't feel now why is this happening or this happening? No, it all works within its context. It's fascinating through the changes. What's different? What's a little what they've decided to change here and there, but. Yeah. At its core, as an adaptation, the fact that it is doing so well is basically Netflix's new top series, beating out even Stranger Things as far as its first season, being number 1 in how many countries or however metric they do it. That's impressive to the point where I love this. My partner's sister contacted her last night just saying, hey, so we're watching this new show on Netflix called One Piece. It's silly, but it's good. And you're just have you heard of this before? And yes! I'm I think I have.
That's the interactions you want to have with people, is folks who just kind of what's this weird thing?
Mm-hmm. But they kind of get into it.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the magic. That's what makes me so happy.
And I even got an example of a step beyond the magic because, unfortunately, my partner came down with a little cold, a little bug right now. So she's been laid up in bed a little bit. But she's laid up in bed, which means, can I borrow that manga?
No.
She's already up
That's
to...
Where it starts.
She just finished the Syrup Village arc.
Oh,
so yeah. That's what she's already read, and she's been enjoying it. She's definitely been enjoying it, but I wonder how much because she gets bogged down. If there's too much fighting for too long, she gets bored, and she was starting to feel that a bit by the end of the Syrup Village arc. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, I'm a little worried for the future, but I think she'll stick with it as far as what we have now. So we'll see.
Yeah, well that's funny that you mentioned that, 'cause that I even found that myself. I forget if I mentioned on the podcast at all, but I finished Naruto for the first time this year.
Oh,
I've been a huge fan of it, ever since the Toonami days, but I never sat down to finish it. And even I, as sort of a pretty kind of in the weeds shonen fan, there were stretches of that where I was all right, get on with it,
wrap it up.
But I've never really felt that about One Piece. So I do wonder if, somebody who's not really into shonen fights, how sort of like the pace and the cadence of the manga will do for somebody like that. But, for somebody like me who, generally likes action and likes the pace at which the manga moves, like there are still, just because I like action doesn't mean I like it all of the time for action's sake. Because I learned this year that I have limits.
Well, it's good to know. Rather than episode by episode, I think it's probably best to cover this season character by character.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, I was thought about going by episode, but I'm like, no, I think character is kind of where it gets there. Because we can go, like, when we talk about Usopp, we can talk about the adaptation of his story, and same with Sanji and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we kind of go beyond that one.
I like that approach a lot because I think the characters is really, that's always been the heart of One Piece, and I think the adaptation understood that. And so you sort of have to frame the adaptation choices by how they serve the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I think with our first one, and obviously the main character, we got Luffy, but I think in tying into Luffy, we got to talk about Garp and Koby as well.
Yeah. Oh, this might be the thing I have the most capital O opinions about.
Yeah, for sure. Let's start with your opinion then. Like, how do you feel how they treated Luffy and by extension Garp and Koby? Because obviously the latter two got a massive boost in what they do.
Oh yeah. And that's sort of the thing at the end of the day, right? Like, so okay, let me start broad because I think I can sort of see the meeting at Netflix HQ now where they're just like, oh, well, the data says, the viewers enjoy having a good subplot and they love having the main characters, chased and having a subplot that ties into the main plot by the end. And that's what all our research says, blah, 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 blah. Because it feels very like we have to add this because we got told to.
Potentially, I didn't quite get that feeling. My thought, because we saw that there was a thing going around on Twitter where they mentioned that the big thing that they had to fight with Oda to try to really convince him is the Garp subplot. Yeah. They really had to fight for that one. And my interpretation of that with Garp is it felt like they wanted to have more of a personal conflict for Luffy.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's more. It could absolutely be the other one in, but the way they weaved it in there to have this chase, but also kind of still stay in the spirit, is to have it be Luffy. Like, he wants to be this pirate. Here's a family member saying, no, you cannot be a pirate, and you have to convince that family member, because otherwise, if you look at the manga, Luffy is kind of detached from most things. He, of course, fights for people, but there's very few personal stakes, at least until later on when the crew becomes more of a family.
Mm-hmm. And I think if that was mostly what they did with the Garp subplot, I would maybe feel a little more positive on it, which is to say that, like, I don't hate it, like I've kind of just like passively dislike it, but it is just, it's one of those things where it ends up taking a lot of time and taking away from that time I feel like could have been served a better purpose.
Yes. It comes at the expense of two characters in particular, namely Sanji and Usopp.
And I think the thing with me is, like, because I was really waiting until I watched the final episode to, like, cast judgment on it. I was like, they've been clearly building up to, like, Garp chasing Luffy to, this is going to build up to something. And the way that like final confrontation takes place it feels really like weak. It feels really kind of light-handed and just like Garp's whole arc was, sort of about like accepting, like learning how to let go. But like, I don't know, from my perspective, he's already let go. And you don't really get the sense that he's hanging on to something and trying to, he's preventing. It's more
like he's punishing a child.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just, it didn't come quite across the way I think they had intended it to. And man, it's it's hard to talk about Garp in depth because all we've really seen of him is the cover stories up to where we're at.
Yeah.
So I think what I can say is the shift in characterization isn't bad on paper, but it is still kind of vying for attention with like a billion other different things. So to me, it ends up feeling like it doesn't justifying itself enough. But there are also there are things that I like about it that enable some really cool things too.
Yes, there are,
which is why it's not an entire wash.
That are fresh that I think work a little bit better. I'll be honest, him and Nezumi, that was not that felt pointless to have Garp interact with Nezumi, as limited as it was, because it didn't even feel like anything happened. It's like, oh, Nami knocked him out, whatever, I don't care, that sort of thing. But other interactions like him and Zeph,
that's my favorite one. That's
just these two older men talking about the next generation, one willing to let go, one not, while also highlighting how I love they more and more reveal how much Garp is like Luffy, or Luffy's like Garp, in that way, just on opposite sides. Still want that freedom, but their freedom means different things and leads them to opposite sides of the law. And those are the strongest moments for him.
Yeah. The Garp and Zeph conversation feels like, I don't think I can pinpoint an exact moment in the manga where that exact conversation would happen, but it feels like a conversation that would have happened in the manga with two completely separate characters.
Yes.
Name any two, honestly.
Basically, so, old guards, Correa and whoever else that was around that just happened to, people who know Gold Roger see Luffy and be like, huh.
Right, the next generation is coming. That is so thematically entwined into the themes of the manga that it's just I was hooting and hollering when I saw that scene, and just feeling like I'm watching Zeph and Garp have this conversation on screen right now. It's just it's mind blowing to me. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it is really one of his best. I also love the display of strength when he tosses the cannonball and Luffy gets his gum gum balloon that is kind of disturbing, but that's just the way it is. But it's kind of fun in that way. Garp has his moments, but it ultimately feels like they should have taken out a little bit more. It just a little too much of him.
I do really like the sort of mentor aspect of it that he has with Koby, because it's what you could infer from where we're at in the manga at this point with the cover stories. All of those scenes feel like stuff that probably happened in the manga off screen.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is sort of instilling the sense of justice in Koby and kind of getting him to basically think for himself.
Basically, yeah. Not just because Koby starts out like Marines are all good, and then you meet Morgan and whatnot, and it's like, oh no, what does this mean? And how do we settle this and just get that core for Cody? And that's all great. I think the Cody stuff, especially as he bonds more and more with Helmeppo, that felt like a very natural progression without having to have Helmeppo get taken hostage.
Yeah. Honestly,
it felt like a more natural progression how these two became friends than the cover story of the manga. And by the time the season ends, we're basically in the middle of that cover story.
Yeah. And while we're talking about Koby, his final conversation with Luffy in the last episode, I thought was really sweet. Just sort of in the way the live action adaptation puts sort of the dichotomy between good pirates and good Marines and bad Marines. Just right from the start, they are, pushing that.
Yes.
And sort of having Luffy and Koby kind of finally split ways, and it's just okay, we're gonna be a good pirate and a good Marine. We are going to be the best versions of this thing. Really, that highlights it in a way that I don't even think the manga really does.
I agree. I think that's definitely the case. Plus, it has the wonderful callback of Luffy's being "Where's my face?" on the wanted posters, and then Koby gets to be the one to present it.
Yeah, that was great. That is such a better moment than just him coming across it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I obviously we have a lot to talk about, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but as far as Luffy, my God, nailed him top to bottom. It's a different interpretation, but it works, especially trying to get those more emotional beats in there. I think it works. I can't think of anything that feels too lesser about this version of Luffy. The only thing that comes across as odd is that he's noticeably weaker.
Yeah, that is true. Which I feel like that is probably a conscious choice on the adaptation team staff to sort of keep the tension higher, because it is, Luffy is kind of during East Blue, until he gets to
basically crocodile.
yeah, basically crocodile. But I would even argue like Krieg and Arlong a little bit.
Yeah,
he is kind of coasting on his strength a little bit. So and that is I'm neutral, I guess, on that choice. But like, yeah, Luffy in general just feels it feels right in a way that, like, I don't know, we watched the movies together, and like you can tell when the characterization is off, right? Like you can tell when it just something about the way these characters are depicted feels wrong, and there's a very like slim tightrope with Luffy, I think, where you don't want him to be too selfish, but you don't want him to be like too much of he's not a moralizing goody two shoes either. And so there's something very just like impulsive but ultimately charming aspect to him, and just like the performance and the writing for him, I think just gets it.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Like I don't need to feel like we went over it so much in the first episode, and just that stretched out, and just those individual moments that really stand out for it. But let's go ahead and get to Zoro, because Zoro's an interesting case here, where he starts out. I like the gradual cracking of his veneer. I think that's sort of his whole thing, because he's very stoic at the beginning, but by the end he's laughing with everyone. He feels part of the crew. It really is a great way of showing him get there, and I think he has that appreciation for Luffy with the whole Mihawk fight, of course, and so forth. And they did the best they could with the Kuina backstory.
Yeah, that's fair. I would even go as far as to say that I liked it for the most part, but and I like that they really were just like, there's an accident, as opposed to she fell down some stairs.
Yeah,
that's a little thing that goes a long way.
Yeah.
I've actually not really until the end. I kind of didn't vibe with their version of Zoro, like, to be honest. There was something about, like, it felt, particularly when he was just detached, it felt like all they really knew what to do with him was like, okay, he's kind of like wisecracking one-liners. He's like,
he's a badass, I think I'm kind of stoic badass.
Yeah, he's the badass. He's the stoic badass, but he's also, it didn't quite hit the same for me, and I think I'm it's more of an unpopular opinion. From what I've seen, like, people really dig, the characterization and the performance. The actor mostly just sounded really bored to me. So it was, that sort of, it was like watching a lot of really bored wisecracks. And I did really like, in episode 2, where you sort of see like the trust form between him and Nami, where Nami's trying to escape. Whereas, was like Zoro's getting, like blustered at by Kabaji.
Kabaji. They added a backstory where Kabaji's brother was killed by Zoro. I'm like, okay.
I do. Zoro appropriately doesn't care.
Yeah,
which I think is pretty on point. I think he kind of barely remembers.
Side thing, because I don't know where else it would come up. I love the fact that during that episode, we see somebody obviously who looks like, I forget the lion tamer guy.
Yeah,
and Buggy just yells at him, "And where was the lion?" That's good lampshading.
It is good. I think you get one.
It works out very well in that regard. But you're right. When Zoro has the chance to open up and not just be stoic badass, I think that's when he becomes his most interesting. When he's talking to Luffy after, the defeat from Mihawk, when he's bantering with Sanji, and I like him just constantly. I like that that he considers Sanji a waiter more than a chef, because he only saw him waiting tables, not actually cooking for a while.
That feels like a really natural way to sort of like sew that rivalry together. I loved their interactions from Baratie to the end of the series. Like that felt like, once Zoro has somebody to play off of, I think he's a lot stronger.
Yes.
This version of Zoro, at least. Like, while he's kind of on his own and while he's feeling a little more distant, I was kind of not into it as much. But like, I feel, and that's sort of my feelings for everybody, regardless of how I felt about them initially. Like, by the end, they're all like playing off of each other great. Like, they feel like the Straw Hat crew.
Yes. You just want to see certain characters a bit more because of that.
Yeah.
Because you want to see those elements, which I think will probably get strengthened as you know, if we get a second season.
Yeah.
And I even kind of dug the change where instead of having Hachi there, they both the Sanji and Zoro had to team up against Koby.
Yeah, that was a neat touch.
Yeah,
probably they felt like, well, we have to kind of compress things and get them moving in a certain order. I was, just as a quick aside, I was really shocked that they kept the Usopp's fight against Chu. I was like, oh, of all things, we're doing this.
I'm so glad they did. I feel like Usopp needed a moment, though. Let's be honest.
He did.
Usopp
he
absolutely needed a moment for this.
I was really happy that they kept it. Of just kind of expecting like, okay, they're just cutting it down to the bare essentials, and so they recognized that Usopp needed at least one moment to really shine. Because he didn't really get that during Kuro. Yeah. And that was. If we can talk about that for a little bit.
Well, I think we should save Nami for last. So yeah, let's go to Usopp now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Syrup Village is better in the live action than it is in the manga. It just is.
Yes, because
it's the only one I feel that way about.
I think you're right, because it changes the vibe. It has a completely different feel from anything else, and obviously it's a budget thing. Just like how with Buggy, it was like, we can't show a town being destroyed. We can't show the buggy ball. So let's just keep it to this tent and have it very much more contained. And it's fine, but it works much better with Kaya's house. And having like this serial killer vibe, or the killers in the house type thing.
They made Kuro into a slasher villain.
Yeah.
And I think
they made Bucci and Sham actually interesting.
Yeah.
It's not like I think major upgrade, but it's still something.
Yeah, I think avid listeners of this podcast will remember that we were a little harsh on Kuro, because he tried to come off as intimidating, but like his plans you could poke like a million holes in them because he just he was Kuro of the 1,000 plans, but like his plan leaks almost immediately, and we just the whole thing with Django and like having like the 3 little kids with Usopp, like. It feels sort of lower tension than maybe it should have. And I think if you really like Syrup Village in the manga, I could understand that the live action version probably swings too hard in terms of tension. But as somebody who
it gives more of a focus to Kaya. It really strengthens the relationship between Kaya and Usopp, I feel. And I was a little I was trying to think of why didn't he just do this at the beginning? Because it's such a small moment, a small thing about Kaya getting control of the shipyard, which is what Kuro wants. Wants that wealth at the shipyard because it would go to him. But I feel like that one weakness is they don't communicate that well. That the reason he's trying to kill her now is because he would get control of all this. I don't think they outright say that at all.
Yeah, I think I sort of understood that based on my familiarity with the material, but I would I kind of would wonder if that would be confusing to somebody. But because they didn't outright say it, that's one of those things where my mind kind of filled in the blanks. It was like, okay, I see what they're doing here,
Yeah, that's very much what happened with me. But when I was really thinking about it, I was like, why did he try to do this? Because it was very much advantageous to have somebody not familiar with any of this see this and be like, why is he doing this? As well as this is the reason he does this, and I think they're doing it this way, and that's kind of how you fill it in. But I'd say that's the only real weak point of it, because otherwise Kuro does come across as obvious but cunning. He's super effective. Obvious to us, but you get why he's like that. But he also Kobe's I don't trust this guy. It's one of those things. Yeah. He's just barely keeping it in. But he's also more dangerous because we always consider it he didn't kill Mary. He Mary didn't make sure that's all taken care of. And guess what? His plans fell apart because Mary was able to warn Kaya. But no, Mary's dead. I was shocked.
Yeah, gets the kill. Which again, that didn't occur to me until I finished the show. or like again because my mind filled in the place. Oh yeah, Mary, he's fine.
Yeah. I saw in the well. It's like, oh, he'll wake up in the well with Zoro. It's like, no, that's just
exactly.
a corpse.
They'll get out. Yeah, no, they don't really acknowledge it. They don't really bring attention to it. It was like, no, Mary's dead.
Yeah, it's the only like super. I mean, it's kind of obvious if you really think about it, but the only super confirmation you get is like, we're naming the ship after Mary, so we're going to call it the Going Mary.
Yeah, which oh
yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah.
It's sweet in that way, and I like that he was changed from a butler to like kind of an officiant, a friend of the family type thing, running the business for. Made him have that bit more of an importance that you'd have otherwise.
Yeah.
God, it's one of those things you never thought about, but just to have Kaya and Nami have a conversation.
Yes.
Again,
and to have it
great
like
point.
Nami's caught in the act while she's just like, stealing stuff.
and because Nami's very different here. She's willing to steal from whoever. It's not just a code like only stealing from pirates. She's like, nah, she's a spoiled rich girl. I'm going to steal from her.
Right, yeah. Nami has an active hatred of rich people. And I was wondering where they were going with that, but like I loved that conversation between her and Kaya, because Kaya is just like, oh, there's too much stuff here anyway. Like, she's sort of challenging Nami's like predispositions about wealth, which feels that it's a small thing, but it does feel in character, based on, like the situation in Arlong Park, and Kokoyashi Village and stuff like that. Like that feels like a natural sort of shift in Nami's character.
Right. And the other thing that I think works, because one way you could read that is like, oh no, wealthy people are fine and they're nice, you can trust them and all that stuff. But I don't think that's what they're trying to do here.
No,
I think
not at all.
It's definitely one of those things where it's people have preconceptions. This is what a pirate is. Luffy challenges that. And I think that's, again, for Nami, I hate pirates. Luffy says, I'm a pirate. And he's like, you're not acting like a pirate. Well, I'm a different kind of pirate. And that's the same for Kaya. She's a different kind of rich person. Doesn't mean there's not bad ones, but she is like, it doesn't mean they're all bad.
I'm gonna try to remember to come back to that point. There's something I want to comment about that, but I don't want to break our order or anything. But yeah, no, that is definitely a running theme that like, and I think what I really love about it is that it is a running theme that you wouldn't get just from reading the manga.
Yes.
It's not that the manga doesn't have it, but like the live action puts such a stronger emphasis on it that, to me, as a fan of the manga, it's one of those things where like the show's keeping me on my toes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we got to go in very different directions here. Like Luffy's still taken out of the action for a little bit, but it's thanks to the poison that's been happening to Kaya, which, why the hell would you trust that soup? My God, that was looking disgusting.
yeah. Just like, okay. God. Well, I mean, it makes sense for Luffy.
It's true. I love that that they emphasize the strength, like the poison can't kill him. Or he has a rubber stomach or something like that. Somehow. But also that Kaya's been being poisoned this entire time. Go ahead.
I was just going to say for... folks who've read more of the manga, it makes sense.
Well, there you go. But as for Usopp himself, the acting is fantastic. He really captures Usopp. It just feels like he didn't get a lot to do. You got the stories, but you didn't the entire time. Like until my partner read the manga, she's like, "So why does he keep saying the pirates are coming? Why does he tell people about that?" It's like, well, it's about the fact that he wants his dad to come home and he wants to keep the excitement up for this village, but you don't really convey that. So it's a core part of Usopp's character, but they definitely seem to pivot more into less lying, more talking himself up.
Yeah, which I do think there is something about that, like, it works in a way to get like Luffy is just like immediately like, we're best friends, like
especially right when he's like, oh, you're the son of Usopp.
Right, yeah like there's something, even though there's almost zero downtime in this part of the live action show, that was something they were able to convey, of just like that immediate friendship between Luffy and Usopp. We're just kind of like on the same wavelength. My biggest criticism really though is that, like, Usopp doesn't get a whole lot to do, and it feels like he joins the crew because that's what he has to do. It felt like he was missing a lot more of a compelling like reason. I guess because
we didn't get his like dream until the very end.
I think there's something about how in the manga, it's like Usopp's kind of like, we need to save Kaya. We have to formulate a plan, and I need you to help me. And there's something about that time that he spends with the Straw Hats kind of like fighting together that, you know, like by the end of Seraph Village, you're like, well, yeah, of course he's going to join them. Whereas in this, like, he doesn't really spend his time. I guess like I was a little deflated that like it's basically just like Luffy who finishes off Kuro with kind of no help from anybody.
Yeah, it definitely. Yeah, really not much had to happen. It was we just gotta kind of. I think the fight was a bit better in the manga, of course, but because Zoro versus the other two was fine. It did the job.
Yeah.
Luffy versus Kuro was fine. I mean, I don't think it was. Of course, Kuro's super speed effect was a little cheesy, but that's just the way it goes with that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's everything surrounding it, but the actual payoffs don't always hit.
Yeah.
As far as like Usopp and the crew, Kaya absolutely do.
I think that the thing for me is that like because it is such a dramatic like restructuring of this arc, like there are a lot of really good things that come from that because, like, in the manga, Seraph Village, you know, it does feel a little meandering, and again, you can poke like 1,000 holes in Kuro's plans. Just it becomes a much tighter story due to the fact that it basically takes place in one location, and I really like that aspect about it a lot. But you lose a lot of sort of like the smaller characterization and kind of the motivations and things like that when you are so just like focused on getting the core part of the story across.
Yeah, especially because we have, you know, Koby and the Marines in there at the same time. Like, again, pretty decent scene between Koby and Kuro, but it does sort of take away. It's a decent replacement for Luffy getting squished by the bow of the ship.
Yeah,
being
that's
out of the
true,
commission for a bit. But I don't know. It just something feels off about it, but mainly around Usopp. But the overall feeling is good for those sets of episodes. It just, I don't know. Usopp.
They end up doing a lot more with Usopp after.
Its introduction just kind of flounders a little bit. But I love this detail as we get to the Baratie, and we'll talk about Sanji now. I didn't even notice it because I just didn't even think about it. But as soon as he walked in with his new outfit where he's trying to look like a pirate captain, my partner immediately like, he's wearing his hat wrong. I know that's intentional. As soon as she said that, I was like, that's intentional. He's meant to be what he thinks a pirate captain is, but he doesn't know how to wear the hat because he doesn't know what he's doing. That is a good detail.
That scene where he just gets like drunk off his ass.
Yes. He's getting drunk telling stories.
Usopp. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
That's when Usopp really stands out, having all of that. He again doesn't get the chance to really shine in the Arlong stuff. He's more running away or like let's not be here. He doesn't get that moment where he's like saves the village and has to run away from Arlong and all that. But he does get the fight with Chu. And I was like, oh, cool. They used the ketchup and they used the hot sauce to take out him. It's like very nice. Very nice. And even have that wonderful scene at the end where he's telling all the stories and Luffy like, all right, I'll give you this one. It's like, 3 cheers for Captain Usopp.
That warmed my heart. Small nitpick before we move on to Sanji. There's that bit in the first episode where Luffy's like, "Oh, great fighters call out their attacks," and you know, of course, Zoro's just whatever. And that is a big pet peeve of mine. Is like for the most part, the live action treats the material with so much love, but like whenever Hollywood touches anything, the second you get to like special attacks, it's like they're so just like, oh, it's cheesy. Nobody will like that. And so they lampshade it a couple times. They do it with Sanji too in the last episode. And it's just more like on some levels, I'm glad that they saved it. Like when Usopp finally like he called it his attack name against Chu, I was like, man, that's hype. But you know, then like I guess like they can't pick a lane. Like they're shying away from it, but also not. And it's just one of those things that like the attacks to me are such a part of like One Piece's flavor and character that I understand why they saved them for some scenes, but it also felt like you should have just gone all in. They went all in for Luffy.
Luffy went all in, and it makes sense. And I got a good laugh at when Zoro brings it back for Sanji when he's like does his all of his call outs. And he's like, oh yeah, all great fighters call out their attack names. It's like, you're gonna fit in this with this crew.
Yeah.
If we get a second season, I feel like this is going to be a running theme where they each sort of do it and really do it. Because I think I can totally see them getting to the point where he gets to the fight with Mr. One and he actually calls out his attack name for it. And then he just like finishes him off as like all great fighters and then that sort of thing. And that's how we sort of cap off that sort of running thing where we're cool with saying our attack names now. Luffy's doing it all the time. Even Zoro's up for it. I feel like that's a good capper.
If you have to grow into it, I can accept that.
Yeah. I feel like that's what they're doing. Because I agree. It'd be cool if they could just do it right from the beginning. But to have it a narrative and character thing where it just shows more and more of him getting comfortable with the crew to the point where he's like calling out his attack names, I'm cool with it.
I can see that. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, got to Baratie and we got Sanji here. And again, Sanji just feels like I love his characterization. It nails his characterization much like Usopp.
His banter with Zeph is A+.
Yes. But it feels like we just don't see him that often.
Yeah, he kind of like Usopp, he feels like second banana in his own arc.
I couldn't even explain it because it's not like there's a ton of like action happening in this, because it's like them arriving at Baratie, kind of eating. There's no like worry of Don Krieg showing up, because the whole point is like Garp calling Mihawk on to sick Luffy, and he's like, oh, let me finish this up, and it's just him dismantling Krieg, which I thought was a pretty great way to introduce him. But it also we lose that whole aspect of the Grand Line is so dangerous that you could run across a random warlord of the sea and he will just kill you because he feels like it. I
think because I was also similarly like not really sure what the deal with the Sanji thing was. Like, why does it not really feel like his story? Mm-hmm. So let me see if I can offer my take.
Okay.
Because they introduce we see, even though they cut the Krieg pirates, you do see Ging, and he comes in hungry and Sanji feeds him, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, we don't get his coda. We as far as like the eating thing, we make sense, and we don't get the whole like in part of his backstory of you need to eat every scrap because you never know when you're going to go hungry to really push in his tail. That said, backstory, he has one of the best conveyed backstories, I think.
It's basically 1-to-1.
Yeah. I was like, are they going to go manga or are they going to go anime for his backstory? They went manga.
They went manga. Zeph, he ate that leg.
Yes, he did. And kept the amount of days going on. I like that they kept it kind of nebulous, just how much, like how the food was lasting and all that. But it was, kept it harrowing. It was definitely interesting. They didn't have that last bit where they get rescued and whatnot, but just to have, I mean, obviously, he survives, so you don't need to see that moment.
There's definitely something about like child Sanji eating like obviously rotten food in live action that you're just like, oh.
Yeah. I think it was the first moment that got me to tear up in the same way that I did in the manga. Yeah, for sure. Where they really captured that emotion.
I think the key thing is, though, about like the manga, the whole thing with Krieg and Gin and stuff like that. Like, it feels like you're introduced to Sanji and already like he's like, you see the consequences of his creed, like what it really means to you feed anybody who comes across your way, consequences be damned. And there isn't really anything like that in the live action.
No, he doesn't get punished for it.
Yeah, and you don't see him like struggle to like fight for what he believes in.
Yeah,
and I think that's a key difference. So that just kind of makes him feel like he's just there.
It really does feel like he's just like Zeph gets tired of like, okay, here's an opportunity for you to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like.
Right. And there's the whole thing like the goodbye is appropriately tearful, but because they cut so much out of the Baratie arc, and you don't really get that time with like all of the other cooks, you don't really get the vibe even that it's like, oh, this is like a rough and tumble establishment, run by former pirates. And well, they focus so much on specifically Sanji's relationship with Zeph, which I really like, but it means that sort of like Baratie as a space and as a place as a whole feels less important to him.
Yeah, it's
especially
just a place at this point.
Yeah,
he's indebted to Zeph, and you don't get the sense that Baratie is Zeph's new dream.
And I understand, like, it's such a beautiful set that I'm, like, yeah, of course they wouldn't want to just like bust it up or anything. But a part of me was a little bit sad that, like, oh, by the time they leave, aside from what Arlong did to it, it's basically pristine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is you really, like, there's something about that desperation at the end of the arc in the manga of just, like, all of the fighting that's happened and everything.
Just the trickiness of Luffy, fighting above water that will, like, end him instantly. Mm-hmm. You lose that tension in that way. Because
that tension is so lost, they end up placing a lot more of it on the Zoro and Mihawk thing, which felt a little silly to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting changes with the whole Zoro Mihawk fight. I mean, the fight itself is basically the same.
Which I liked.
Yes,
they did a good job with it.
I like that he has the little thing. They're demonstrating how powerful Mihawk is at all times. They got the whole slash there. And I even like Zeph being the one to be like, oh, okay, we're going to use an old trick in order to heal his wounds up and get that taken care of. There's good stuff there. Great Nami moment for that, where she does not leave.
Yeah.
That's an interesting change.
Because there's a whole setup where she's trying to get out of Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
While this whole thing is happening, and she ends up making a crucial choice to like stay. And God, the little nod to like she's reading Zoro like Nolan the Liar of all things.
The call outs in this one, we didn't only get freaking Baroque Works, but they read the Nolan the Liar story, and I'm like losing my mind. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because the thing is, even if they don't reach it, it's like whatever to most people. But you get to the actual story and you get to that part, it's like, oh.
yeah, that's cool. I love stuff like that. But I think it just because there really isn't much else like of real weight happening because they cut Krieg. Suddenly, like Zoro being beaten into an inch of his life becomes the most important thing, and they didn't quite sell it for me. I guess is just the thing. Like, and really,
Sanji's hanging out on the ship with them to just help feed them, like just randomly. He really likes Luffy as the chore boy, and Luffy as chore boy, you didn't get the humor of that. Like he broke a few dishes, but this is a more competent Luffy, so you didn't get the silliness of him sneaking food and whatnot.
I don't think we'll ever all have a better place to put this comment, but I do wish the live action had more slapstick. Yeah,
we are missing a bit of the slapstick. It's slightly there, but they don't go for it. I feel like they really could have had Luffy. Like, Luffy eats the plate that has Sanji's food, and it's more impactful because it's like, oh, this is really good. If he's eating everything, him really liking Sanji's food doesn't really matter.
Yeah, certainly. So it's a mixed bag. I like it overall.
But,
and that's what I mean. Where I don't want to harp too much on the things that they cut, because I think we'd be here all day.
And Sanji's fine. The character comes across as good. It's so good that you want more, and you never
exactly.
And unlike Usopp, you don't really get more. You get him his thoughts on women and whatnot that we were very much used to, and they found a nice way to balance that. They get him being a good cook and cooking for Nojiko and all that, but we don't get, I don't know, anything more. Like he doesn't have this in any individual moment to shine. It's very much always in relation to something else. And like his one winning moment, it seems to be he convinces Zoro he's a good cook.
Yeah. Which I guess that's the thing too. Like because you're trying to cram all of the East Blue into 8 episodes, like it's only natural that you're gonna end up losing a lot of it. And I think for the most part they made the right cuts and they made the sensible cuts, but like there are things about that just like they're just consequences, and they
it's a knock-on
they get
effect.
around it. There's a knock-on effect. They get around it in some ways. Like I feel like they add just enough to make it feel like it's like, oh, well, there's obviously something missing here, but like you do really miss something in kind of like the slower moments and the character building moments, and just like the context and the flavor that having just like kind of all of the side characters around has.
Yeah, and I that said, I completely believe that Sanji's actor will nail Mr. Prince.
Oh yeah,
when it's time for Mr. Prince, if we again get that second season, he's got that.
Yeah. That I feel like that's also the thing too. I feel like they are preparing a lot for it. If they ever get a second season, then I feel like where they have the characters by the end is in a good spot, and the performances and like by the end, and I guess that might be a good way to transition into the Arlong stuff. But by the end, I was like, it really felt like the whole cast was just like really comfortable.
Really gelling, and our final song is one based around Nami. Like they definitely positioned this as kind of Nami's season. Luffy's sure, but Nami's sort of that emotional core.
I feel like they just like
having to go through the most change.
They give her more of an arc just by placing bits and pieces, of like characterization earlier, or making things, I guess, like a little more obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the call to like I have the map, and having that map is the central thing.
I think that is maybe what they did with Nami is what I wish they had for Garp and Koby, where it's just it's a little bit less and a little more spread out.
Yes, I agree with that, because it feels perfectly paced, where you're just like, who's she calling? What's she up to? Like, she's a thief, but what's she all about? And I think seeing her evolution, seeing them take their time to open her up more from where she begins, is almost more impressive than Zoro, because Zoro doesn't really have a place to really. He's just sort of stoic and needs to open up and get a sense of humor. Nami has trauma to get over.
And I guess if you're looking at the East Blue material in the manga, like it really does feel like, if Arlong Park is kind of the climax, then you would want to sort of place those seeds a little bit earlier. Like I get that structure, like for a TV show. And so I think it ends up working a lot better with like how, she stole the map, Arlong wanted the map, and then, like kind of bringing in Arlong into things slowly. Like it's like episode, I think 2 or 3. No, I think
I think end of episode 2, either episode 2 or 3, they have him show up with to Buggy. And that's how we get more Buggy throughout the season, which I thought was kind of fun, because we just got this guy that just badmouthed everybody and is just an asshole.
But I guess before we get to the Arlong stuff, I love that
Buggy needs commented on.
The fact that they brought in Buggy for that is so fun, and that he's just ahead and he's just trying to get his body back.
they kept the whole thing with him being just hands and feet in his head. That's fun. Him being defeated by getting sent into all the different barrels, him like having holes punched out of him. That was like, I didn't like that they took away the fact that like he's sort of the opposite of Luffy, where Luffy's weak to those blades. He is weak to concussive attacks, punches and whatnot. And Luffy's punches not working was dead bother me. It's like, that shouldn't work. Yeah. Especially because he's beaten down by Arlong afterwards. He's doing the same exact thing, but now it's working.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right.
That part's, I was a little miffed about that, but it's again, it's a whatever thing that you could just get past. Again, they're trying to make him more of a threat. We're not going to do the whole tickling the feet thing and kick him in the balls thing as he's chasing after Nami.
Although I did wish they kept that.
That would have been nice.
I don't think we talked about this. I definitely don't think so. Like my biggest kind of issue with Buggy is that I do think in episode 2 they swung a little bit too hard. It feels a little dark, and that had me like just kind of worried about where the show was going. But like, I think Buggy's depiction in every episode after episode 2 is perfect.
Like, you just him swearing at them, just making fun of him at all times, them getting sick of the clown. All that
it's
stuff.
Great.
It really works.
The extra banter is hilarious, and I'm glad that they were able to work him in for a little bit.
He adds nothing really in the grand scheme of things, but it's fun. And to have
that's why he's so good. That's Buggy.
that is Buggy. That is true. And it's just like his first appearance in the manga. He's definitely more threatening there than he'll ever be again.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I understand what they were trying to do with it, but it just for my personal taste, I thought it was just like a wee bit too dark.
I can see that, but Buggy himself is fine. He's like, him really not mattering. Like, let me go and I'll get my body back and I'll help. And then he's like, just runs off. And it's,
of course.
I do enjoy getting our one F-bomb, just effing clowns.
Yeah. If it had to be somebody, it would be Zoro to Buggy. You know what? If you got one, you got to use it right.
Yeah. And hey, we even get the setup at the end of him teaming up with Alvida.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. I kind of hope they keep the Alvida actress the same rather than change it and have it do the slim down thing.
Yeah, I think it would still be funny if Luffy didn't remember. Or it would be funnier if she looked exactly the same and Luffy's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah. I mean, they kind of kept that with him never remembering Buggy's name.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he got it wrong in a different way every time, which is good.
That's a good little character beat right there.
Yeah.
But Buggy, good stuff. Definitely fun as just this object throughout the entire thing. Mm-hmm. And Nami's story, honestly, a good build up. I like the change of her, really showing that she cares about the crew because we have less time by having her stick around for Zoro. Yeah. And be the one to read to Zoro and whatnot, that she cares about these guys at this point, to the point that Arlong has to come pick her up, basically.
Yeah, which is, it's really funny to me, like the fact that Arlong shows up at Baratie, and then like Luffy tries to take him on and gets defeated. That feels very like that's what the manga would do now.
Yeah, that's definitely a crocodile moment where it's like, you can take him on, but nope, we're gonna toss. He's a fish man. You're gonna toss you in the water.
Yeah,
the water definitely seemed way more effective. We're just getting splashed, drained them of their strength.
Yeah, I guess you don't really see somebody in the manga just get like splashed a little bit, but yeah, I could see that.
They definitely decided to up it a way more than what we'd seen, what we seem to have seen. But yeah. That said, as much as I like Nami's stuff, there's one change that I just like. I don't even fully get it. I guess just because of time reasons, I guess. But the fact that Nojiko doesn't know that why Nami joins up with Arlong, because she still has the tattoo. Mm-hmm. That's a mistake to me.
Could you elaborate on that? I guess like I hadn't thought about that. And
okay, so I think the reason Nojiko got a tattoo is to make Nami not feel bad that she has Arlong's tattoo. It's like, no, it's just it's just a normal tattoo. It's just whatever. I have one too. So because they have the stigma of tattoos in Japan. So
I actually completely forgot about that.
It's hard to communicate that statewide because tattoos are a bit more definitely more socially acceptable here. But
yeah, that's true.
There's still that camaraderie there, that sisterhood, that fact that they're still families there. Yeah. And you lose something there because of the reason for Nojiko's tattoo is gone. And then also the desperation, they try to get it in there with episode 8, but with episode 7, with everything breaking down, the actual moment that that we all love of her having that frustration of stabbing Arlong and Luffy stopping her is great. Just done beautifully. But the stuff surrounding it is weaker, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that I feel like that is sort of the thing, is that they knew they had to nail that part specifically. And so that like there's a lot of things that are kind of like awkwardly bolted around it almost.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about it, and in the manga, it's just this cavalcade of stuff where you see all the blood, sweat, and tears literally on the money from what she's gathered over the how many years in order to pay off Arlong. To have Nezumi take that and know that Arlong, and having Arlong constantly say, "You can trust my word," only for him to find a loophole to break it, and Nezumi take care of it where she can't do anything about that. And to finding out that, oh God, the village actually knew this and they're just not willing to hide behind a child anymore, that they're willing to go sacrifice themselves, and they won't listen to her even though she's willing to try to gather it again to try to make it happen. And having that desperation of like, oh God, everything I've planned and worked for is gone and I have nothing left and it's all his fault, so I'm just going to take it out on my arm. Yep. You don't have that as much of an effect in the live action version, unfortunately.
Yeah, because they really are just trying to get through so much that I almost wonder if they should have like gone whole hog into sort of changing the context and the circumstances around it, because they are just like like I think I'd mentioned to you, like everything's there or like partially there. All the elements that make her break down are kind of there, but they're just not really like arranged and depicted in a way where it's just like you have lost everything and everything you've worked for is just fallen to pieces. Yeah. So it ends up feeling like just kind of another moment.
It's just her absolute lowest moment. And even though she tried to push him away, she's like, please help me. Like, there's just that breakdown of finally asking for help, which matters more because, again, she's trying to present herself as the bad guy, push him away, even though she has these little moments of showing, yeah, she's still on their side as much as she can.
That's true,
I don't mind missing those where she's like fake kills Zoro or fake kills Usopp.
I think you do need some depictions of just like, oh, she is, like I think they should have had to work a little harder to convince Nami herself that there is good in her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because the thing is, we know for a fact, because she stuck around for Zoro versus Mihawk, that there is good in her. That's the convincing moment. That's all they need. We don't need to do anything else because she's stuck around for that, as far as an audience is concerned. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's, again, the moment itself, great, but the build up a little haphazard.
Yeah, which I think the thing for me at the end of the day is that, like, it's an admirable effort in spite of it all.
Yes. And, we have fight against Arlong and his crew. I like Arlong Park as actually kind of like a park, like a theme park.
Yeah, it's kind of a party-ish.
Yeah, that's sort of fun. We definitely have Arlong they're definitely getting into some stuff later on about how fishmen are treated and the whole slave thing. They're really pushing that to really try to get his point, but also just like, you're still doing this to good people, so we gotta stop you. You're doing terrible I
think can I talk about this for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
Because, man, I have such complicated feelings about specifically, like, the racial grievance stuff with Arlong is like, it's not incorrect for reasons that we haven't gotten to yet. Like, that stuff feels natural, but there's something about, like, how the world opens up and how you see things. Like, when you see fishmen in the manga, like, you just see them kind of as the villains, and they're sort of a, like, other than like I guess Hachi is kind of your hint that, like, okay, like, they're all, like, they're a little goofy, like they're just people, basically.
Yeah.
And so, like, that depiction, I think, because you don't have Hachi in this version, you really just kind of, you get, like, you play up the racial grievance aspect without really the time or the nuance to really depict it in the way that the manga does. So I kind of wish that they had stuck to the manga and just had not talked about it at all, because there's no time for it.
Yeah, the manga plays it where we think it's this way, and then as we meet more fishmen, it becomes like, oh no, it's just Arlong was a bad egg. Type thing, and we immediately, like, in the live action, we have a fishman working at the Baratie. And that just to show that, yeah, there's the guys they're good. There's not like anything notable about him, but he's a good guy. He's not like evil or anything. And he doesn't come across as a slave. So
yeah, it becomes very, because there's that moment where I think he's Arlong's talking to Nezumi, and he's something about, like, well, there's just like we've accepted you into our society, blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but there's still lots of knock-on effects, and there's still lots of racial tension and things like that, and
we get a name drop of a warlord that we haven't met yet, Jinbei.
Oh, well, they name dropped Jinbei in the manga too.
Oh,
so.
did they? I forgot that they did that. Did they mention
Yeah, they did it on
Jinbei?
the way to Arlong Park in the manga.
That's right. Yeah. I forgot. But yeah, so we got the Jinbei mention as well.
Yeah, and so I think the thing for me is that, like, the depiction of Arlong and the fishmen in the live action is sort of just like, it's not incorrect, but also a little heavy-handed, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's like it feels.
They want him to feel like have depth as a villain rather than just raw or evil fishman.
Right. Yeah. And so, of course, still in the manga, he still has that sort of, like, superiority complex against humans.
Yes.
And so they're playing up that aspect. But it just, like, I really think how the manga portrays them at that point in time is a very specific choice, and they kind of threw away that perspective choice for a short-term gain, and I don't know if it entirely worked out. And also, oh boy, okay, get into this, but, like, so there's something, like, Arlong feels very specifically black-coded in the live action.
I noticed that too.
Which and so part of that is his actor is black, so he's just going to bring some of that, like there's no kind of getting around that. I think my line was like the hip hop backing track for his theme.
Yeah.
Where I was like, no, they have gone from like general broad gangster to like American hip hop, very specifically black. And I think that is there's not enough time in the world to unpack the decisions.
It's not a great thing when you code that sort of thing very specifically against a certain.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is like, I'm not like mad or upset. I'm just kind of like, huh, just like
it's like
huh.
Not a great choice. Not a great choice.
It's complicated.
It's definitely complicated for sure.
Yeah, but I hope I'm not the only one. I talked to my my sister, who's also a big One Piece fan, and she kind of had the same read that I did. Just like,
yeah.
So,
I can definitely see that read.
Yeah, so I don't know. It could just be us. Could be nothing.
I kind of doubt it's just you. I haven't seen it brought up too much, but yeah. I can. That said, it's very multicultural. Like Luffy's a Mexican actor. Usopp is obviously black as well. But the specific choices here is where it's.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, the show's racist or anything like that. Like there are a lot of characters I was not expecting Nojiko to be casted black. I was not expecting.
And that's perfect.
Patty.
That's
freaking Patty. Just looks great.
There's some great choices where it's like, that makes sense for that character.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that the world of this One Piece is depicted in a very diverse way. But really, you could like. Don't give them a hip hop theme, and I think that would take away like 90% of my grievances with how they did Arlong. Yeah, that was sort of the line where I was like, oh, this is a choice.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
I hate to end it on that note.
No. I mean, the thing is, we're not going to fully end it on that though. There is one more aspect here. Again, the fight between Luffy and Arlong, great. Brought down the house just like we did before. Got the battle axe. Got the "I am your friend" line. It works. It's a pretty great final moment there that really captures that spirit. But it ended so well with how we get Luffy getting his bounty. We get the scene at the barrel of them declaring their dreams. Love them all, like the actual line being spoken by them, their kid versions.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful addition to that. Seeing everybody see the poster and how everybody reacts to it, all their families and whatnot. We got that lovely moment with Kaya. Forgot to mention Kaya and Usopp kissed. I love they made that a little bit more.
Great choice.
Yeah. It's obvious. It might as well go. A little bit further with
go
that.
for it. Yep.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Just that moment of like, you're the most wanted man in the East Blue. Everyone's going to be gunning for you. Who cares? We're headed for the Grand Line, and we even get little hints to Reverse Mountain and whatnot. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful set of ends. And of course, we didn't quite get what I predicted with Luffy interacting with his poster and the way all the other villains. It's him getting the sail and the sort of like being complete. The crew is complete in quotes.
It puts such a smile on my face too, that they like that being how the season ends. I think is perfect. Mm-hmm. The way that they're headed to the Grand Line, and it's like they are. Luffy's got the bounty. They are officially the Straw Hat crew. It feels like that was the last little thing that was missing, and they ended it there. It's
and even got it again. If we get that season 2, we got that nice little tease. Because I was wondering, are they just going to skip Logtown? Nope, we got a Smoker at the end there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And honestly, kind of smart if we get a season 2 to reintroduce everything through Logtown.
Yeah, I think that would make a good first step, because that's like you'd be bringing it full circle. Like that's how episode 1 started in the live action. So you start season 2 like in the same place.
Yes, you have Logtown, have the Buggy and Alvida teaming up in the same way. Have the interactions with Smoker and the dragon, and then end the episode with them riding up Reverse Mountain.
Yep. Yep.
From there, adapt. You got 7 episodes to cover the Alabasta arc in whatever way they decide. Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, that's what I got to say to that. Like, you crammed 95 chapters into 8 episodes, and now, and God, they should at least get like 10 or something. I know they already kind of blew the budget as it is, but like, oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta let Alabasta cook, man.
You really do, but hopefully they find some way to do it. I know we need at least 2 episodes for Chopper if we get that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I like the way we covered this. It's just character by character. I think that sort of works because obviously watch it yourself. Good recommendation from us. Not perfect, but a damn good adaptation that could introduce new people into the fandom, which is always good.
Yeah, I made a tweet about this, and like, I'm so happy that it's good, and I'm even happier that like a new audience is getting introduced to One Piece, and I'm not embarrassed by it.
Yeah,
that I'm not just like, oh God, don't.
It's not like with 4 kids. It's like, oh God, this is how people are being introduced.
Exactly. Yeah, like it does good by the One Piece name, and that's all anybody really could have asked for. And I think, we got fairly critical at times talking about the show here, but like, I think that's just because it's so good, and it like is able to even elevate above the manga at certain points. It is able to like rearrange things, and but it's still trying to do its best by the characters. Like you see the show, and I feel like they were trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way for me. Like, it doesn't feel cynical or embarrassed to be itself.
Yeah, I agree with all that. There's missteps here and there. Doesn't cover everything perfectly, but the heart is there, the spirit is there, and you can recommend this to somebody. It's like, check this out. Yeah. You might like this. And with One Piece getting close to the end, who knows how close to the end as far as the manga, and the manga being such an easy read. Like I said, my partner got to the end of Syrup Village, which is probably like approximately like 40-50 chapters in like a day.
Yeah. Oh, that's
God. We're just going particularly slow.
Yeah. And that's sort of the thing too. I feel like One Piece as a franchise has just been going like from strength to strength lately. And this is like the live action show is just like another feather in the cap. Just like the manga's firing on all cylinders. The anime is beautiful now. They're about to finish Wano. It just like everything's great. Like, it's a great time to be a One Piece fan. It's rarely not.
Yeah. But this might be the best time. Who knows?
Yeah. Seriously,
man. But obviously, there's a ton of little moments that we didn't cover here. We're not going to cover every little bit and piece. That's 7 hours of material. So we did what we could. But
that's what the manga's for.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, let us know your favorite parts in the comments. I'd love to see what all you think about this first season. But as far as us, I believe we've said all we wanted to say about the first season of the live action One Piece. Thank you so much for listening, and you can find more of my ramblings and stream VODs over at BitNerd Games on YouTube or BitNerd with an _ at the end on Twitter. And Brandon, where can everyone find you at?
I'm at Brandon Bovia on Twitter, talking about anime, manga, games, and my job. I think I mentioned on this podcast before that I'm working on a manga adaptation of Star Wars: The Mandalorian. That's coming out. That will probably be out by the time you're listening to this. It comes out on like the 12th of September or something like that. Yeah, so pretty soon.
Very cool.
Pretty exciting,
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely check that out. And if you'd like to help us out more, you can support the podcast over at patreon.com/Derek Bittner. That's DERRICKBITNER to listen to the next episode ad-free 3 days early. And make sure to return next time as we return to the manga. It's time for more Enies Lobby to discuss chapters 381 to 385 of One Piece. So until then, my friends, bye.
Remember to take life one piece at a time.